Okay, we're going to paint this face in the style of Arcane. We're going to use this image as reference just to kind of pick up the way that the color is added here. There's some color here and there's some lighting, and I'm going to show how to kind of mix the two together to get what we want. We have a subsurface scattering material that we made in Maya. We just brought it in the image. That's all we needed. You really don't need anything more than that. You go to your madcap material and you look at your modifier and you look at this image here. That's going to be our shader. That's going to be everything we need for the shader. Just that image. You can even just screenshot it right there and use it as a shader. There's a little bit of pink to it, but because it does have subsurface scattering, but I'm keeping it pretty white so that most of the color will come in on the skin. Basically, the way that we paint these materials is we need to use some sort of standard brush, turn RGB on, and then you can see we're beginning to instantly put color on. I'll show you how to do the whole system for making it feel right. But a couple of things that are important are making sure that one material is applied to the skin so that you can keep this material the same. And we do that by also turning M on in the material channel, selecting the correct material, and you go and you say fill object, and that should fill it with whatever material you have selected here. And then you can go back to RGB and start painting around. A couple of things with the brush, turning on or turning off lazy mouse, that would be something I would do. And then the other thing that I find helpful is to turn up the roll distance. That's going to make it so it's not so spotty, where you have a bunch of dots if you're drawing too fast. The roll distance under stroke modifier roll distance, you turn that up, it will create a less spotty roll, hopefully. Also turning this to freehand rather than drag, but if you move too fast it will be spotty, but hopefully we just kind of move our brush strokes slow. As you can see, if you move too fast it will be spotty. I don't know if I could turn it up more than that. Try 20. No, keep the 10. It seems to be the highest one, but that'll keep the spottiness from happening. Okay, the other thing I want to do is bring in the color reference. So we can do that by grabbing a polyplane 3D. The primitives show up here like plane 3D, and then you make it a polymesh 3D so you can apply texture to it. I'm going to turn off any color, and I want it to have just flat color material. You go down to texture map, and this should have a basic UV just 0 to 1 in this planar shape. As you can see, it's a few polygons, not too many, but it should have UVs already. So I just go to texture map, and I'm going to import my reference image, which I should have here somewhere. Okay, so yeah, it's upside down, but that's easy enough to rotate around, and it's good to go. What I'll do is I'll go back to my head and append it to my subtools, so it'll be in the background. I won't actually touch it. So append, you move over, grab the plane 3D. There it is. You can select it and move it out of the way, move it back a little bit, and it'll just kind of always be there anytime you need to grab from. You can turn it off anytime you need, but I like having image planes around to grab color from when I'm painting. So here we can start with the RGB brush. I'm going to change the alpha to not just be an airbrush. I'll just make it a square. It does bode better to the style of Arcane. First thing we need to do is kind of fill with a big base, and that would probably be kind of the darker color just to get started. Not totally dark, but somewhere in the shadow area just to get started, because otherwise it might be everything ends up being a little too bright. And so I want to fill the entire object just with that color. It's a good start. Now we can kind of go in and grab the brighter colors and start bringing them in. I usually turn down the intensity a little bit and bring in for bringing in highlights, but I might not go to highlights right away. The first thing I usually do is I start to redden the eyes, lips, and ears, and a little bit of the nostrils. This is just typical whenever you are doing faces. This is really important to kind of give just a little bit of redness to the eyes, the mouth, and the ears, and a little bit on the nose as well. You'll notice I'll bring the RGB intensity way down, but we still need it to hit this object. And let's see, am I seeing it? Sometimes you can't always tell. Yeah, there it is, it's happening. So this is more of a gradient, more of a softness. If we study the image, there's some softness stuff. Certain things are sharp, like very illustrative, very comic book. Certain things are a little softer gradients. And the initial thing I like to do is the soft, and then I'll end on the sharp stuff. That'll give me a really good contrast and make it feel rich and painterly. So get a little bit of the red in there, maybe not so orange, a little more of the red. It's almost kind of maroon or kind of gray maroon in certain instances in our references. The lips will have lipstick on it, but even around the mouth, around the corners of the mouth especially, trying to get some kind of life, some redness. Notice it gets a little dark. That's okay. We'll go over that with just the typical shadow that we already have. And I'm just using C whenever I'm needing to pick a color again. I just grab C. Let's hit C on the keyboard, picks whatever color I have my mouse over. So it's real quick to start playing in the right colors. So a little bit to the eyes, a little bit to the ears, definitely on the inside of the ears. Very important to have some color here. And yeah, let's get intensity up and a little more red. The ears always have a lot of color in them, and especially helps them recede from the other parts of the face. The other thing we'll look at is eyebrows, hair, hairline, stuff like that. But I really need just kind of a base to get started. A little bit more red down here, and then sometimes kind of shadowing into the anything that's going to be under like the hair. I might just start with a little darker base, and then we'll add the hair, brighten it up when we need to. Now I can kind of do some of these fun highlights and shadows that show up. There's kind of shadows around the nose and highlights on the top of the nose. So I'm going to grab some of the brighter areas, and using a low intensity with a square alpha, I'm just going to kind of brush up to give that sharp look. There's a lot of really sharp looks and corners to arcane. This model that I made doesn't really represent that necessarily, so some texture could be changed as well. On the actual physical surface, I could add a little more chisel here and there, chisel around the eyes, chisel around the nose, definitely around the lips. There's some really sharp chiseled corners, and I'm doing that with Trim Dynamic. That one works pretty good. And then let's go back to the raw drawing or the painting with the standard brush. Just trying to get a little variation in there. I always like to do a little shadow underneath the cheeks too. That's going to be less red than the shadows in the ears and mouth, but under the cheeks, kind of broaden the cheeks. So this might be a little heavy-handed underneath the eyes, but it's also a little more maroon dark in our references. The other thing, inside the eyes, you're going to have kind of a bright redness because it's all really fleshy material, just like the inside of the mouth. So sometimes I make those pretty bright or at least dark. There's like a lip around the eyes that I find to be very important. Use Dan Standard, holding down Alt to sharpen it a little bit because it doesn't look like it's very represented yet. And then get a good corner, and that's going to show me where there is the kind of the pink of the eye. It's usually a little more pink, and then there is the makeup will show up. So yeah, the pink, a little less, yeah, more like that. Pink does show up on the inside of the eye pretty brightly. Usually you don't put too much makeup on the other side of the eyelash. So we do pay attention to this kind of shelf of the eyelid, and then the eyelash will take over quite a bit there, and then you'll have the makeup, which in this case does exist, or either it's dark eyes or makeup. It's definitely a lot browner, less saturated, and we want to put that in there. And I kind of bring up the intensity to get a sharpness to it. Maybe not quite so dark. Want to almost get it real clean in there. Noticing the brush is fuzzy no matter what I do, and I think that has to do with the focal shift. So I'm going to flatten it out a little bit so that it is less of a fuzzy brush and more of a sharp brush. This is going to be important for a lot of the arcane style. So I also might not exactly have enough polys to get a lot of details, so I'm going to divide it once more. That can get a little sharper edges as well. So yeah, you can see right underneath the eye, there's this kind of bag of the eye. There's also the eye socket kind of coming out. There's the sides of the nose that has a certain shadow to it. And sometimes it works a little better to build up slowly rather than hit it too heavy-handed. But I like to kind of play around with both. Also, if you hold down Shift, you can smooth certain areas, like blur certain areas. And I would turn off Add if you're just working on the color, because if you hit Shift and you start blurring the color, you're also going to be blurring the edges of certain things, like the eyeball. You might not want to be doing that. So I do use Shift with vertex color, but I'll turn off Add when I'm holding down Shift, and that'll help smooth out certain things that might have gotten a little too sharp. So yeah, let's tighten up some edges, and then I'm going to really try to define that look that gives us that feeling of arcane kind of illustrative. Feels like some of it's real lighting, some of it's shadow. There is definitely some dark edges on the top of the eye as well. And I love doing all this in the high-res model because I can really match the high-res to the surface of whatever you're going to get later. And that is just not, it just doesn't work the same when you're paying over a normal map. You're not getting as much accuracy. So I always like to paint high-res for that reason. So here's a little bit of that kind of makeup look. I want a little bit of the shadow of the nose in here. Right now everything is symmetrical, but it doesn't have to be at this point. It just is kind of saving me a little bit of time. I don't do the shadow underneath the nose because that's should happen in the lighting engine, but I might do just a little bit of a shadow on, not shadow as much as just the terminator of the nose, giving a little sense of interest there. And then on the top of the lip, you do have some bright white there, so I might start to highlight that, and that should begin the chisel of the lip and the nose. And then a little bit on the eye, if you have like any corners of the brow, those kind of wrinkles, that's a good time to put them in. And then things like going back to the cheekbones, I made them kind of soft earlier, but if we grab a little bit of white, we can kind of pop this edge, and we're getting that nice painterly look, which is what we're going for right now. So a little more here and there. A lot of this is working well because of the brush alpha being square, focal shift being low, giving me like kind of a nice edge to the brush, so it doesn't feel like an airbrush, which seems to be that look of the arcane stuff. It doesn't feel like an airbrush. It kind of looks like somebody used more of a digital brush. It could be a type of airbrush, but the way it's masked around the edges ends up being less airbrush-like and more like a square brush, square digital brush. Okay, so you know, like eventually I'll ditch the original to get the look just right. We want a little sharpness on the chin, a little darkness underneath the lip. This is very common in shading, so sometimes we'll keep certain things a certain way, like underneath the nose, underneath the lip, and then just pop it out. If it was, if you wanted to give her a 5 o'clock shadow, one of the things we'll do is blue rather than red around the face, and this will give the feeling like there is a beard growing underneath there. I'm not going to do that, but it is very useful if you are doing 5 o'clock shadows to just put a little bit of blue in there. You don't really have to even put detail, just a little bit of blue ends up making it feel like that. And then, yeah, just wanting to sharpen certain corners. There's just little touches here and there, like in the philtrum, there's a little shadow. And capturing these subtleties is what the style is all about. Not too much shadow, because it will look like a 5 o'clock shadow. So I try to maybe bring in some red here and there, and that makes it not feel more like smooth skin. And then let's get that dark lipstick, bring up the intensity, and this is a very sharp edge of the texture, the lipstick, so it's very important to really pay attention to the every corner, every little edge of it, and give it that pop. So you can see I didn't quite hit it there, but there, yeah, there's like a pop right there, and kind of there was a little bit of a pop here. Just see that square brush really gives that some fun look that the lighting engine doesn't do automatically. And sometimes you can add toon shading to a lot of this stuff, but it's not quite the same. Arcane isn't necessarily toon shading. It's more about the hand painted look, which is what we're trying to do here. So yeah, a little bit of bright around the neck, especially around the sternocleidomastoid. That's going to be an area that we usually want to show off in our illustrations, so it does make sense to give it a little pop there. And then, yeah, kind of pop the top and bring some of this, just kind of leave it the way it is. So right around there. If you're getting a little too much contrast and you want to kind of dim the contrast, you know, this might end up looking a little too much like Uncle Fester or something. What you can do is grab a neutral kind of color anywhere and bring down the intensity and just go over it with a neutral color, and it will kind of bring down some of the contrast. And that's usually a good way to work. It's better to do that because you get a kind of a good mix, and that is what the arcane style is about. It's like a little overpainting, a little overworking that we're not used to seeing, because everybody's always trying to hide their brushstrokes, but we want to see more brushstrokes. Okay, and then we really need some, well, a little more corners around the mouth. It's just interest here. I'm going a little too fast, but the lip stuff needs a little more fun. Like that. Really pay attention to that corner there. Darken the edge. Symmetry is on. So there's like almost like hand drawn little spots, and sometimes I do that with like Dam Standard, turning RGB on, getting a color in there, and now it'll kind of crisp in. It's like I'm drawing in like pencil lines directly with a pencil, so it gives it a little bit of crispness too, which can be fun. And that's going to give, you know, these extra levels of the lips that does look like the reference has. Just darken that in the corners. All right, going back to the standard brush, I will, yeah, just want to lighten this area up a little bit. Okay, so now she probably look better with eyebrows. So let's use it's extract is the tool that I like to use for hair and eyebrows just to get them started. If they're physical like they are here, sometimes if it's more realistic, you just want to draw them on by hand rather than um, uh, do what I'm about to do because they're not necessarily completely separate from the body, but in these cartoony styles, you do want to draw them on or pop them off the body. So what I'll do is I'll draw them on with a mask, and you definitely want to take your time on this, making sure the shape looks good. You also need enough polys to get a nice clean shape here. And then you notice it's not just totally straight. There's some extra little pops at the end that make for a big deal with the eyebrow. There is a nature of the eyebrow that's kind of mostly one third straight and then one third kind of points down. That's usually the fashion makeup eyebrow, but let's see, gotta remember to use control. This is the mask, not a shadow. This I'm not actually drawing it this color. I'm just creating a mask here. But if I pop it in the right shape, and I'm happy with the shape, then we can do the, what is it, extract. And first off, I'll test it, see what it looks like, a little too thick. So bring that down, extract, okay, a little too thin, bring it up a little, thick, so somewhere around here. Yeah, that's probably good. And then when you hit accept, it will pop it off into another subtool, which now I can paint whatever color I want, and that will end up working out. So let's go back here. You've got your eyebrow here. It's not quite dark enough, so I'm going to fill it with this dark color. There we go. And now, yeah, you can kind of see it. The cool thing with breaking off the eyebrows that way is you can move them now. And they are a separate piece of geo. Probably wouldn't change the geo too much, but you could be rebuilt if it needs to be. It's a little super high res and maybe not exactly the perfect shape, but it will work for eyebrows. Work pretty well, actually. And yeah, it just needs to kind of hover around the brow area. Some of it will kind of bury inside, but you don't want it to look too obvious how it's done. You want it to kind of feel like it's connected nicely to the body there. So that'll give her some good eyebrows to start. And then the hair we can do very, very similarly. So with the hair, I'll latch onto the body, I'll deselect the eyebrow, and we can do the hair the same way. But what's really important in the hair is the anatomy of the hair is very specific. Even though you might not think it, it does have very specific shapes. So there's side hair, which kind of goes all the way around to the lower side, back, head, and pops up in the front. If anybody's receding hairline, sometimes you can see it this way. You know, it's like Ed Harris kind of thing. And then what you get is some sharp kind of points. Everything's kind of growing from here, kind of growing right up there. I try to really make sure that focal shift is sharp. So the corners are nicely represented. So where they're coming from is really important. And then there's the top hair. This will give you the little widow's peak if you got one, and then it kind of widens and it meets up with the side hair, but there's always this corner in between. So this is how I like to start hair, just to really pay attention to the hairline. The last thing in here is the side or the sideburns. It's like just above sideburns. There's a little tuft of hair there. But all this could work as a single hair unit. We're going to say extract and give us a little bit of a volume here. Maybe I want it a little thicker this time, so bring up the thickness, say extract, and maybe that's too thick now. Bring it down somewhere right there. Okay, still too thick. About right here. Okay, so yeah, something like that will work. Let's clean this up a little bit, and it doesn't actually accept until you say accept. So let's do it, extract, accept. Now it's this kind of shell thing. Maybe it grabbed a little bit of the ear. I don't want that. So let's try it again without the ear part here. Okay, yeah, just want to clean up the edges. And sometimes, especially in Arcane, they would have these kind of different kind of minor groups of hair groupings work out really well with hair. So just want to kind of give a couple of points there around the side hair here. Okay, something like that. The interesting thing is how close the side hair gets to the eyebrow. So let's delete that other side hair. And we'll make a new one. Couple of minor cleanups. Okay. Okay, so now we can say extract, and we like it. We say accept. Now this will be the side hair. Need some sort of material on it, but this will be the thing that you sculpt on. Probably want to make sure this brush has auto masking, back face mask on, and then you can just bring out the hair from here utilizing Dynamesh anytime you want to change the poly direction. So that's usually how I start hair, just kind of something like that. And then you can use all kinds of things like a snake hook is a fun one if you want to kind of bring some flow into the hair pretty quickly. It just will take a little bit of time to make it do whatever you want. But it's a good start for hair, and then the hair you can paint it and sculpt it very similar to how I was sculpting the body, but I would not necessarily needing that much detail of the paint because it is pretty simplified, this type of hair. So just wanted to show how we can very easily kind of create the hair using extract, and then yeah, and then Dynamesh will just kind of redistribute the polys however you want them. I do have some other hair, but I think I like this one. I'll just kind of nudge it around. It's a little messy at the moment, so it'll take a while to clean up to get it to look exactly how I want. But the face is going the direction that I want. Okay, so yeah, the final step would be kind of freckles and things to give a little more interest in the actual surface, and that is just like you would think, using a standard brush with pretty high intensity, finding the color of the freckle and just kind of drawing it directly on the model, probably with not a symmetry on, because this is the part that kind of ends up being very unique from character to character, no symmetry. But yeah, you can see how easy it is to just kind of get a little more interest, little spots here and there, make it feel like it's hand painted, and then you want to keep the design of that really well thought out. What looks cool, what is too distracting, what is too weird, You know, every now and then there's just a couple of highlights I like to put in really softly to kind of push the overall look. And yeah, that should do it.